Yeah, there she is.
There she is.
All right, okay. Well, thanks, Johnny, very much for participating. Even though it's remote, I know that you wanted to come down here.
Yeah.
Just before we start with you, I wanted to just make some comments, regarding the whole Tippit saga, because it struck me last night, and there's a lot of seasoned researchers here, that people haven't taken a deep dive into the Tippit thing, and we also do have some new delegates who may not know a great deal about it. I know that we're going to focus on some specific physical stuff with you, but if you don't know much about it, there's a lot of multiple facets to the whole Tippit saga, things that are unexplained, lots of contradictions, lots of inconsistencies, and so forth. And if you do start getting into it, you are going to be quite frustrated, as you are with obviously many other aspects of the case. And I know there's not a great deal of physical evidence that relate to the points that I'm going to make, but you should, if you're interested, look at the flight from TSB to the theatre, the contradictions between the eyewitnesses and the ear witnesses at the Tippit scene, the movements of Tippit and his motivation in the hour or so preceding his death, the DPD tapes and the transcripts. That's another rabbit hole. The arrest at the Texas Theatre, you get into that. There's lots of inconsistencies and shenanigans going on there. There's a question mark from some researchers whether Oswald actually lived at Beckley. And also, I think probably the most integral thing to the assassination case is the timing of the death of Tippit, because obviously that links very much with the JFK murder. So with all those things I've just discussed, there's not a great deal of physical evidence that is related to that. But if you want to dive deep into it, you should be looking at those areas. There are two must-have books. If you haven't looked at this saga before, Dale Myers with Malice. It's a brilliant resource. It's not necessarily a good conclusion. He's on the wrong side of the picket fence. And Joe McBride, Into the Nightmare. If you haven't read that, you ought to read that book as well. I spent a lot of time, including with the Tippit family. There's also some incredible articles and essays and papers that have been written on this part of the assassination. And I would direct you to Bill Drennis, Bill Pult, Gary Moore, Larry Harris, who became a postman in Oak Cliff, Dusty Rhodes, Jim DiEugenio's done some good work on this, and Greg Parker, actually. His work actually suggests that it's got nothing to do with the assassination. So lots of good stuff out there. So that's just some general comments on the Tippit thing, Johnny. In terms of the physical evidence, and I presume that you're going to cover some of this, again, it is a bit of a dog's dinner. You've got the wallet issue, you've got the jacket behind the Texaco garage, you've got the fingerprints on the vent and the bumper. You've got this contradiction between the holes and the bullets in terms of the number of and the manufacturers. You've got the bullets that were found on Oswald at City Hall. So there's a lot of stuff I'm sure you're going to touch on, Johnny, but I suppose the big one at the end is going to be, did he fire that revolver? Does that revolver and those bullets, do those bullets match? And of course, that in itself is another question, because I don't know if you know, but Sergeant Jerry Hill, he's on the DPD transcript is saying it was an automatic and not a revolver. So there's lots to get into, Johnny. So I think if I just kind of leave the floor with you, and I'll come in if there's anything specific that we need to talk about, but just go for it. 40 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer afterwards.
Sure. I think it was probably best put by Larry Harris when he said, we just don't know what happened at 10th and Patton. And we don't know. We don't know who killed Officer Tippit. in my opinion, the evidence just doesn't suggest it was Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, you look at the whole question of Tippit's killing, and there is some serious question marks against it. For example, when was he killed? The Commission's star witness, Helen Markham, put the killing at 106, 107. Of course, the Commission and themselves say that Officer Tippit was killed at 115. So there's lots of ear witness. There's lots of witnesses to a man fleeing the scene or men fleeing the scene. So yeah, there's a lot to get into. But the thing that I would probably touch upon first is,
yeah, top there.
You can see me there.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing is the story goes that Oswald goes back to his rooming house after the assassination. He then apparently puts on a jacket, grabs his revolver, and leaves. He then is seen at a bus stop by his landlady at 104 or around 104, something like that, waiting for a bus that would take him in the opposite direction to 10th and Patton. Then Officer Tippit is killed, and the next we see Lee Harvey Oswald, he's arrested at the Texas Theatre. Now, the question is, and a very important question to me would be, if Oswald was always going to the Texas Theatre, which in my opinion he was, why would he be anywhere near 10th and Patton? Because it's in the opposite direction. So if he was going to go from his rooming house or alleged rooming house to the Texas Theatre, there is more direct routes to take. To go to 10th and Patton or to go that way is just out of his way completely. And then you've also got to look at the fact that how did Oswald get there? Because nobody ever sees Oswald traverse this route from his rooming house to 10th and Patton. Now, I remember speaking to Walt Brown about this, and he said that standard procedure would have been the police should have canvassed the area, went door to door to all houses, asking the people who own these houses, did you see this man? Did you see this man cover this distance? This was never done. Now, this is standard police procedure to canvass an area, and it was never done. So I feel like that's a very important thing that was missed by the Dallas police. Also, the fact that the ear witnesses and the eyewitnesses, like Markham, for example, who Joe Ball, I think, called an utter screwball, with a debate to Mark Lane, and I think Wesley Liebler actually labelled the testimony as utterly worthless. But Helen Markham claims that the shooting took place at 106. Of course, if Oswald's seen at 104 by his landlady, there is no way that he could traverse that distance in 2 minutes unless they had like some sort of jetpack or whatever. So it's basically impossible for him to get to the scene. The other thing is that the closest witness to the shooting was Domingo Benavides. Now, Mr. Benavides was not taken to a lineup in the aftermath of the assassination. I think he said he couldn't actually identify the person who shot Officer Tippit. But if you read Benavides' testimony, it's very interesting. He says that when the shooting occurred, he ducked down into the floor of his truck, and he stayed there for a couple of minutes and waited until the coast was kind of clear before he then went over and had a look at the officer and tried to radio for help or whatever. Then a man by the name of T.F. Bowley then comes on the scene. He looks at his watch, it's 1:10. The officer's already dead at this point. And he then takes the radio from Benavides and radios the call in. But what's interesting is that Benavides' testimony over time has now changed. It went from a couple of minutes now to a couple of seconds, which is very important. And I would always kind of attribute or always try and have some common sense or apply some common sense and logic to this point, right? If you had just witnessed a man being murdered on the street and you think the gunman's still in the area and he might turn his gun on you, are you going to wait there in your floor of your truck in safety for a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds? I mean, to me, it's quite obvious. You're going to wait there for a couple of minutes until the man's escaped or men have escaped. The situation's kind of died down, and then you'll go out of your car, out of your safety, because self-preservation kicks in. You don't want the gun turned on you, right? So it's interesting that Benavides' story has changed over the years. And obviously, the reason for that change is it helps the official story point the finger at Oswald. But I think I also think a very important question, or a very basic question about the whole Tippit case is this: why would Tippit stop Oswald? I think that's a very key question that sometimes gets missed out, right? So the official story has it that Tippit, or it's assumed anyway, because we don't know what Tippit's thought process was, that Tippit apparently stops Oswald because Oswald looks like fits the description of this armed and dangerous presidential assassin. Now, Tippit's actions then are very strange, because if you're going to pull over or accost a dangerous presidential assassin, you don't just pull your car over at the side of the road for a nonchalant chat. What you would do is, or what any trained police officer would do, surely, would be to accost this man with gun drawn and radio for backup, or vice versa, radio for backup first, then accost this man with gun drawn. But Tippit doesn't do anything like that, which to me is very strange. Because if you are assuming that this man, or the only reason you're stopping this man is because you think he fits the description of the killer of President Kennedy, then why are you leaving yourself so wide open to be murdered? It makes absolutely no sense to me. Also, you've got the fact, going back to the ERN eyewitnesses, the only person that actually apparently witnessed the killing was Markham, right? But some of the witnesses who weren't called before the Warren Commission, like Mrs. Higgins, put the shooting at around 106. Now, why is this important? Because, as I've said, it's the time issue for Oswald to get to the scene of the crime. Actually, when the Warren Commission put the timer at 1:15, that was even tight to do that. 106 was like an impossibility. I think Larry Harris actually says, and Larry Harris, to me, is the foremost authority on the case, or was the foremost authority on the case, and he put the shooting around 108. So that it's quite interesting. Of course, there is witnesses at the scene that said that Oswald was the man fleeing the scene of the crime. But the problem that you got with that is, like, for example, Ted Calloway, for example, he's one of the men that pointed Oswald, that fingered Oswald and say he was the man that was fleeing the scene. Well, one of the problems with his testimony is this: before he was taken to a lineup to view Oswald, he was told this. He said, the police officer, I think it was either Fritz or Lavelle, I can't remember off the top of my head, said, we want to be sure, we want to try and wrap him up real tight on killing this officer. We think he's the same one that killed the president, and if we can wrap him up tight on killing this officer, then we have got him. And I mean, that's a direct quote that I'm reading there. I mean, is that how police officers speak to potential witnesses before viewing a lineup for a suspect? It's I mean, to me, it's absolutely ludicrous. So yeah, that's just some of the examples that you've got, and why the case is such a mess from an eyewitness and an ear witness perspective. I mean, let's be honest here. If Oswald had lived and stood trial, okay, I think he probably would have stood trial for the Tippit killing first. And they would have probably tried to have used the fact that if they got a guilty verdict in the Tippit killing, then it would have been there would probably be no need to try him for the Kennedy killing, because he'd have got the death penalty anyway. But the problem is the prosecution, which would have been Henry Wade, would have been reliant on Helen Markham. And Helen Markham's testimony is full of contradictions and holes, etc. Now, apparently, Tippit died, he was killed instantly. Okay. And Markham, and I think Markham's the only one that says this, Markham apparently went up to Tippit and apparently was speaking to him, or tried to speak to him. I mean, the guy was dead instantly, and she's saying that she's went up and spoke to him. So there is various contradictions about our testimony. Also, the fact that if you read in the Warren Commission testimony of Helen Markham, she is led to saying that she picked Oswald out of the lineup. And Mark Lane really hammered this point home during all of his presentations and conferences. He used to always say the number two man, because Oswald was the number two man in the lineup most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And Markham says that she never recognized Oswald as being the person she picked up to the lineup. She just picked number two was the one that she had picked. In fact, I think it was I can't remember who the questioning counsel was, but they asked her directly, was there a number two man there? And that's when Markham says number 2 was the one I picked, and that was Oswald. And she says that she wasn't sure. She wasn't sure that it was Oswald, but when she looked at this man, she just had cold chills run all over her. I mean, if you've witnessed something that as horrific as the murder of any person, and you were as close to it as Markham was, then surely the killer's identity, or who the person who killed him was, would be basically emblazoned on your memory, on your mind. But she couldn't pick Oswald out from that. So that's quite an interesting point as well. But yeah, in fact, Larry Harris in 1979, I believe, asked a guy by the name of Dr. Robert Bookout if he would evaluate the Dallas police lineups with in regards to Oswald in this case. Now, Dr. Bookout was a leading US expert on basically identification procedures with police, etc. And if I can read a direct quote from Dr. Bookout to Larry Harris, he said, "By any stretch of the imagination, virtually every rule in the book was violated in the conduct of these lineups. The results of any of the lineups conducted as poorly and under hysterical circumstances as they were should be regarded as utterly worthless." And I would say that all the eyewitness and ear witness testimony in the Tippit case is utterly worthless. Why? Because these witnesses weren't asked until late January, or questioned until late January. And by that point, Oswald's basically fate was sealed in the media, and it was rammed home for days and months afterwards, after the killings, that there was only one man responsible. His name was Lee Harvey Oswald, and he was the one that killed the president and the officer. And when the officers went to these witnesses and asked to identify the man who killed the officer or fleeing the scene, they only brought one photograph there, and that was the photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, it's just a sham. And that's the thing, why this case and the John F. Kennedy murder case is such a mess, is because they've never been investigated properly. It started with Oswald and it ended with Oswald. And let's be honest, Tippit's killing wasn't really investigated at all. So yeah, that's the problem.
Can I just interject there with just some of those very good points that you make?
Yeah, sure.
The Benavides truck. I mean, if you go to 10th and Patton, you're not in the room here, but the truck is basically where Tony and Malcolm is sitting in relation to the murder. So your point that he may not have been in a hurry to get out the car, and his original statement that he ducked down and waited for a couple of minutes for things to disappear, I think is a very valid point. You drifted into the the time of the killing. You mentioned Markham. She left her home regularly to get that bus every day. It was timed to be 2.5 minutes from that block to 10th and Patton. So the sort of 106, 107 time that she states is not unreasonable. Roger Craig also confirms 106, 107 that he learnt of the murder in the TSBD. Bowley picked up his daughter. That's something you can't be late for. You want to be there accurately, because he was then going to pick up his wife and go on holiday, and his watch said 1:10. And Shirley Martin, another researcher, interviewed Hugh Ainsworth, and he says that he was at the body, looking at the body, somewhere around 1:05 to 1:10. So that kind of confirms this time frame. And just going back to the witnesses, just for the record, 11 out of the 15 witnesses, either at 10th and Patton or going down Patton towards Jefferson, 11 out of the 15 identified Oswald as the killer. But of course, to your point, the whole lineups and coercion afterwards, render quite a few of these witnesses as being forced or led.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that's kind of forgotten about as well is there had been a lot of intimidation. Witnesses were scared. I mean, there is a story with Marguerite Oswald. She went to Helen Markham's door with Vincent Salandria, and they were told to come back later, and they came back. Marguerite and Vince went back to the house, and a police car was just pulling away, And Markham's husband actually opened the door and says, "We've been told not to speak to you." And apparently Markham was terrified. So yeah, I think there was a lot of intimidation, not just in the Tippit case, obviously in the Kennedy case as well. Witnesses were intimidated, they were scared, there was stories of witnesses dying. So yeah, I think self-preservation probably would have came into force. And I think the best actual example I can give on that is Warren Reynolds. Yeah. I mean, Warren Reynolds was a guy that followed the killer or the suspect, and he lost him. I think the killer ducked into a building and Reynolds lost him. When Reynolds was asked in late January to identify the man who he thought the suspect was, he refused to identify Oswald. He says it wasn't Oswald, and he refused to identify him. 2 days later, Warren Reynolds was shot in the head. And then when he obviously miraculously survived, he then fingered Oswald as the suspect. So yeah, and so I think there was a lot of intimidation going on, and it's just, what would you do in their situation? I suppose would you stick to your guns and say, no, it definitely wasn't Oswald, blah blah blah, or would you then stay with police pressure, maybe change your mind, maybe slip you up here or there? I mean, one of the best examples I could probably give of police intimidation is in the Robert Kennedy case with Sandra Serrano, when Hank Hernandez actually ground her down for hours of basically interrogation. So yeah, the police have done it, and the Dallas police at the time, I don't know about it today, but definitely at the time, had a very bad reputation for intimidating witnesses, and so did the prosecution's officials. They had a reputation that they basically they had people sentenced to death in cases, and they knew fine well these people were innocent, but they'd done it anyway just to get the conviction. So yeah, so the Dallas police isn't, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think it would be, not unlike the Dallas police or the prosecution officials to kind of frame somebody for a crime they didn't commit.
Just going back to the Reynolds thing, Benavides' brother was killed as well, and researchers seem to think that was a case of mistaken identity. All right, so let's focus on the actual crime scene, if we can, in terms of, you know, the fingerprints on the car, or the hulls and the bullets mismatch, or the wallet. What's your insight there?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go to the hulls first of all. So at the scene of the crime, it wasn't actually really at the scene of the crime. I think 2 of the hulls were found in one place by Benavides, and 2 of the hulls were found by the Davis sisters. Not any of the witnesses who originally found these shells could identify them. And what's even more interesting was, I think Benavides picked the shells up and put them in a cigarette box or a match box or something along those lines. And Poe was then given the shells. Now, what's interesting about this is, when Poe was given the shells, he was directed to mark the shells, which he said he did. But the shells that we have in evidence today do not bear Poe's markings on them at all. So, in essence, the shells found at the scene of the crime have no chain of possession, and that's a serious problem for anyone trying to admit this evidence in a court of law. But of course, that never happened because Oswald was killed by this point. But yeah, so the argument is that the shells at the scene of the crime could not be entered into evidence because there is no chain of custody, there is no witness markings on them. Another point is, I think it was Gerald Hill. I think it was Hill, when he picked up one of the shells and looked at the base of it, it said automatic. So it was an automatic. It was an automatic Hill and not a pistol or revolver, which Oswald supposedly used. Also, as I said, the Davis sisters, when they were shown the two shells, they couldn't identify them also. So yeah, there's real serious questions about these hulls. The other thing is the bullets that were taken out of Tippit. I think there were 3 Winchester and 1 Remington. But the hulls that we have in evidence today are 2 Winchester and 2 Remington. So how is that possible? You know, I know defenders of the official story like to say that there was a missed shot. Well, where's the evidence for it?
Well, Calloway, I think, is the only witness that said there were 5 shots.
Yeah, but where's the shell for for that missed shot. It's never been recovered. Where's the bullet for it? Never been recovered. It never smashed into someone's window. Never smashed into any masonry. Where did it go? So to me, it's quite like a desperate attempt to try and salvage the fact that the shells and the bullets taken out the victim don't match up. Also, I think there's another important point, is that in the Dallas Police's inventory from stuff taken from physical evidence taken from the crime scene, the hulls aren't listed. The 4 hulls aren't listed. I think it's only when and then I think it's standard procedure also that when the bullets were recovered and the shells were recovered, day one, they should have been sent to the FBI by the Dallas Police. But the Dallas Police only sent one of the bullets to the FBI for testing. And the FBI couldn't match the bullet taken out of Tippit to this revolver that supposedly killed him. They couldn't do it. Said the bullet was too mutilated or whatever. Then I think Cortland Cunningham got sent to, who was an FBI agent, got sent to Dallas and was basically tasked with retrieving the other bullets. Now, it's quite weird that the Dallas Police never sent all the bullets. They only just sent one. Well, apparently the other 3 bullets were then found in a drawer in the dead file section with the Dallas Police. They were then taken, given to the FBI, and they couldn't match the bullets to the revolver. So then it all came down to the hulls. And as I've stated previously, serious questions arise when talking about these hulls. No chain of possession, which is absolutely key. Now, they did say the hulls match the revolver. But again, where do these hulls come from? We just do not know. So there's a serious question relating to that. There's also a question relating to a jacket that was found away from the scene of the crime. I think it was at the Texaco gas station.
It's behind the Texaco gas station, just by the Abundant Life Temple. So
yeah, so this is quite
by that alley. Yeah.
So this is quite interesting. Nobody knows who found the jacket. There is the police officer who allegedly found the jacket. Nobody knows who it was. Now, it's quite startling that an important piece of evidence, right? If this was presented in a court of law, the first person who would have been asked to testify about this jacket was the officer that found it, but nobody knows who found it. Yeah, very strange.
Westbrook claims it was an unknown officer.
Yeah, which is very strange. And so then the real question then has to be, okay, so what links this jacket to Lee Harvey Oswald? Well, there was 2 laundry tags found in the jacket. And the FBI searched every single laundry establishment in Dallas and the surrounding area. And they couldn't link the tag to Oswald. So then they searched in New Orleans. And they couldn't find any of the laundry tags that, because they I can't even say that word, sorry, that basically matched any of the establishment's laundry tag. So the FBI couldn't match this jacket to Lee Harvey Oswald. The only person that ever did link the jacket to Oswald was Marina Oswald. And to be honest, I mean, I think Marina Oswald's credibility completely in this case is completely shattered. I mean, if anyone's in any doubt about that, they should read the HSCA's 29-page report called Marina Oswald Porter Statements of a Contradictory Nature. It's 29 pages long, full of contradictory statements. So, yeah, so that's the only person that can link Oswald to this jacket. Now, also what's very interesting is when the police examined all of Oswald's other items of clothing, jackets, T-shirts, whatever, they were all size small. And the jacket is a size medium. So why would all these other clothes be small and this one piece of clothing be a medium? It makes no sense. Or no markings of a laundry tag, only this jacket. So it's quite obvious that the jacket is not Oswald's, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting. And also what's interesting as well, the jacket originally was reported as being white. And then it turned to this grey because I think Marina said that Lee only had a grey or a blue jacket. So that's quite an interesting point as well. But yeah, the FBI, who, let's be honest, they're one of the best investigatory, I can't even say that word either,
Investigative?
Yes, investigative. Yes, you know what I mean. Agencies in the whole of the world, they can't link this jacket to Oswald. No, simply because it wasn't his. So I think that's a pretty interesting point as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
So the shooter allegedly, leant on the passenger front side of the car door, and Barnes was the CSI guy. What's your thoughts on the fingerprints? Because my understanding is that they couldn't match them.
Yeah, they couldn't match them. I think Dale Myers get a print or something like that and sent off to an expert? Says it wasn't Oswald's as well.
That wasn't matched. That wasn't matched
either. So is that according to Markham's testimony? I think it is Markham's testimony, right? That the person leaned on the car.
There's also, Bill Smith and Jimmy Burt.
Yes.
Who resided at 500 and something 10th, basically on the junction of Denver. One of them testified that, because they argued that the shooter came from the east and was walking west, which of course makes it even more problematic for the timing. But one of them, I can't remember which one, argued that the killer stopped. It was all kind of casual and put his hands on the door or on the vent or whatever. So that is corroborated by one other witness.
So going back to something you said there, and something I touched on earlier, all very casual. Is that how you approach a presumed dangerous killer? No, you don't. You approach this presumed dangerous killer, with your gun drawn and telling him to get down on the ground, and you call him for backup and you're arresting him. Tippit's actions. See, we don't know what Tippit's mindset was. We don't know what his actions were because it's all speculation. We don't know what he did or what he didn't do.
Do you have a view on how, to this area of the discussion, do you have a view on how the squad car was parked? Because that's at a very odd angle to the curb. It looks like he may have been proceeding, stopped, and then reversed back quickly at a slight angle. Do you have any view on that?
Not well. I suppose maybe not. I mean, I know that the car was blocking an alley, and apparently there was another police car in the alley as well. And so that's pretty interesting. But I've never actually really thought about the positioning of the car being at the slight angle.
Yeah,
I've never really thought of that, to be honest. But it's quite. I mean, I always go back to, as I've stated earlier, about why you would stop him, what would be his rationale to stop him. Because remember, I think the description that went out, which was attributed to Brennan, but I don't think it ever came from Brennan, was that this guy was also armed with a 30-30 rifle. Well, the man who killed Officer Tippit, we know, was not armed with a rifle. So why would then Tippit stop him? And I think, to me, that's the whole key to the whole thing. Why would Tippit stop him? I mean, in my opinion, I always judge the Kennedy case and the Tippit case as their own separate murder cases. And I think that's how everyone should judge them. Because it's almost assumed that if Lee killed President Kennedy, then he automatically somehow killed Tippit, and vice versa. So, like, after the killing to pick up a revolver to then walk.
Sorry, Johnny. I think the connection is unstable. You froze.
Oh, is it?
Yes. What did you say about a minute ago?
I was just saying that I think you should judge the cases on their own merits.
Yeah.
And some people don't do that. They like to talk about the Kennedy case and the Tippit case is basically being one and the same. Basically, the Tippit case is an extension of the Kennedy assassination, and it's not at all. In fact, I know in 2013 there was a mock trial done by WFA TV, and the prosecution these mock trials, the prosecution tried to admit the Tippit case into evidence, and the judge refused it. Said it was a separate murder case. In fact, the only mock trial I've actually seen where they've actually argued the Tippit case was the one done for London Weekend Television, the one with Jerry Spence and Vince Pugliosi, the scripted mock trial that was done in London. And that was, I always found that was to be quite weird, because they were talking about the Kennedy assassination, and next thing Ted Calloway comes on the stand. I always thought that was really weird, because Calloway was nowhere near Dealey Plaza. So yeah, I always try and judge them both on their own merits. But yeah, there's that. But then the question then is, where is Oswald? No one knows. No one sees him. Now, how does he get to the Texas Theatre if he indeed stayed at that rooming house? How did he get from his rooming house to the Texas Theatre? It's a giant mystery. And I think Butch Burroughs, in fact, he worked at the Texas Theatre. He actually placed Oswald in the Texas Theatre shortly after 1 p.m. Mm-hmm. So that's another important point also. You know,
well, I think he's a very credible witness, because he would have taken tickets and he would have sold popcorn, and he alleges he did sell popcorn to him. But he would obviously as an employee, he would know the start of the films as well. So I would have thought, you know, he's credible in terms of accuracy.
You know what I always found interesting? When people say that Oswald fled the Texas School Book Depository. To me, if you had planned the but when he leaves the Texas School Book Depository, he doesn't go to the Greyhound bus station, which is like a stone's throw away from the depository. He then allegedly goes back to his rooming house. That doesn't to me scream, or that doesn't tell me that the guy was fleeing from anything. And I've always argued that. And I think anyone that knows me and my work on this case, I've always said that Oswald never killed the president and never killed Officer Tippit. And I've always argued that he had nothing to do with the assassination. I know people think he did, but in my opinion, he never. But getting back to the Tippit case.
Yeah. So I was going to say there is a strong argument that the bus, taxi, flight is a false narrative.
Oh yeah.
And he, let's say he got a Rambler, was picked up in Dealey Plaza, and was taken to to the theatre directly.
Yeah, that's right. Roger Craig did say that. He said that he witnessed Oswald run down from the depository and go into a station wagon and then leave. And then apparently Oswald, when questioned about it, said, "That's Mrs. Payne's. Don't be trying to drag her into it." And then he says, everyone, kind of solemnly and remorsefully, he apparently said, "Everyone will know who I am now." So that's quite interesting. That's quite an interesting point as well. But getting back, you said something about Oswald, them finding shells in Oswald's pocket when he was at City Hall. That's quite interesting, because when Oswald's arrested at the Texas Theatre, bearing in mind the testimony of the officers, the arresting officers, are all over the place. Now, I've got a screenshot of an article, and it was Nick MacDonald, who was the arresting officer, and he's describing the arrest of Oswald. And he says in this article, and I can send you it, he says that I had my gun at the ready just in case anything happened. So he had his gun at the ready. Now, if McDonald's walking up these aisles, gets to Oswald and had his gun at the ready, and Oswald tried to jump up suddenly or lash out and hit him, McDonald would have shot him.
Sure. Yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense as well. And another thing that's very interesting is that none of the people who were in the theatre, I don't think were ever called to testify about what they witnessed in the theatre also, because my whole opinion of the revolver thing is I don't think Oswald ever had a revolver. I think it was most likely planted on him. But yeah, going back to the shells, he is frisked. On him. No shells, no nothing. So then later, pocket. How is that even possible?
Yeah. it doesn't make sense. So what about the infamous wallet? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I do actually. So, I think it was in Hostie's book, Assignment Oswald. It was when the wallet was first mentioned, and obviously there is footage of this wallet at the scene. I think there's police officers shifting through it or whatever like that. Now I know this causes a bit of debate because I know that he says it's Oswald's wallet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry.
Hello?
So, Johnny, sorry, you've been freezing a bit in the last few minutes. I've just turned off my video to see if that removes some of the, increases the bandwidth.
I've got full signal here. I've got full signal here.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah. So there's researchers like Jim Eugenio who say it's Oswald's wallet, and there's
Johnny.
Greg, he's a good friend. He says it wasn't Oswald's wallet. So there is some debate over this. Now I know that Martha Moyer was told that it was Oswald's wallet, and she related that obviously back to Jim. And Martha Moyer's another fantastic researcher. She's got some very good articles on the case, Trajectory of a Lie. That's in the John F. Kennedy killing. Well, what's interesting about the wallet is they claimed it was Oswald's now, and obviously they've now got a problem because that then gives them 3 wallets. Yeah. You've got, apparently, according to the Warren Commission, leaves it.
Johnny,
Oswald when he's arrested.
Johnny, can you turn off your video? We'll just try audio. Turn off your video because you're freezing.
I can see you. I can see at the bottom screen you guys have one.
Yeah, if
bar reception.
Yeah, so
I'll turn off my video.
Yeah, stop your video and we'll just go audio. Yeah, okay. Carry on.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, so there's a wallet left at the Payne's house, according to the Warren Commission. There's a wallet that's then taken off Oswald when he's arrested by the arresting officers, and they flicked through and they apparently found this Alec Heidel ID, which in my opinion never existed on November 22nd, but that's another area of discussion. And then there's this third wallet that's then found at the Tippit scene. Now, what's very interesting about the wallet was apparently none of the witnesses at the scene remembered a wallet lying on the ground. Now, that's pretty important because obviously that would be something that would most likely probably picked up by a witness and shifted through or whatever, because there was quite a few witnesses on the scene. So that's an interesting point. There was no photograph of a wallet on the floor taken by the police or anything like that. No video of the wallet on the floor. So the theory is, or should I say, kind of educated speculation or deduction, was that they think that someone actually brought the wallet to the scene. That's of course speculation, but that's what they think it actually happened, because nobody ever on the floor. There's no pictures of the wallet at the scene, and it's quite interesting. Of course, if they say it's Oswald's wallet, then that is obviously an interesting part, and that would maybe strongly go to show that he was actually getting framed for the Tippit killing. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Neil? Do you think it was Oswald's wallet?
Well, the speculation is that Westbrook brought the wallet, but perhaps a more simple explanation, because it was Ron Ryland, that the footage that you see that got everybody excited. But there is perhaps a simple explanation that it's Calloway's wallet, that because he got into the car with Scoggins and took Tippit's gun and went looking for the murderer, and when he came back to the scene of the crime, there is an argument that maybe the police were just checking his ID in the wallet, and it's nothing to do with the Hosty claim and the Barrett claim. It's something that's simple, but again, it's speculation.
So he tried to claim it was Tippett's wallet.
No, Calloway's wallet.
Yeah, of course, but I think Bugliosi tried to claim it. Did he try to claim it was Calloway's wallet? Because I'm sure Bugliosi tried to say at one point it could have been Tippett's wallet.
Yeah,
and
there was that. But Tippett's wallet was found in his belongings, wasn't it, at the hospital? If I remember.
That's right. Three officers went to Methodist Hospital to retrieve Tippit's effects, and what's in the effects or part of Tippit's possessions is his wallet. So yeah, so it's quite interesting. Another interesting point actually about Ted Calloway was Domingo Benavides worked for Ted Calloway. Mm-hmm. Calloway claimed that he hollered the man cutting across his parking lot or whatever, and he knew what direction. But according to Benavides, when he went up to Calloway and said that there'd been can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, carry on.
According to Benavides, when he went up to Calloway and was saying about the shooting, Calloway apparently asked, "Which way did the killer go?" Well, why would Calloway have to ask Benavides at this point when Calloway apparently knows which way the killer went? So isn't a statement quite like paradoxical type thing?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. None at all. I mean, I always try and look at this case from any case from like a logical. I always try and judge a case on its merits and the evidence and the weight of the evidence. And I've always that if Oswald had lived and he was given defence counsel, which Mark Lee tried to be his attorney before the Warren Commission, and he was refused. If he was given a defence counsel, and if he was before a fair and impartial, Oswald wouldn't have been, in my opinion, I don't think Oswald would have been found guilty of either crime. The problem that you've got is I don't think Oswald could have got a fair trial anywhere in the United States because of the morass of fraudulent information that was coming out against him. Yeah. And that was spewing out of the Dallas police and the prosecution officials. They were making these statements about Oswald, etc. But what I also find interesting about the guys about the revolver, because I'm requesting further. I back to them in 2019, and I asked for additional pictures of the revolver to be taken, and I literally just heard back from, after chasing them for years. I've literally just heard back from them about a month ago, and they say they're going to take additional pictures of the witness markings on the revolver. That because there's apparently markings in the inside of the revolver that have never been seen. They've obviously never been photographed, and I'm looking to get these markings. And they basically came back to me and said, "Yeah, we will take pictures of them, but they will be with you sometime next year."
Right.
So I'm like,
is the revolver at Nara? Is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. and that's who I've been in email communication with since about 2019 to try and get these pictures.
Right, gotcha. All right, look, we're coming up to pretty much the end of this slot. I just want to give the audience a chance to ask you some questions. Is anybody that? Tony?
Very quickly, just Johnny, we were talking about what happened around the murder just after the assassination, but obviously there's what Tippit was doing leading up to that was also a bit questionable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, let's be honest, Oak Cliff, or the area around 10th and Patton, Oak Cliff. I mean, all the officers were basically told to go to the area around Dealey Plaza. So what was Tippit doing around 10th and Patton and Oak Cliff? Of course, he goes into the record store.
Johnny?
He apparently pulls somebody over, looking for something, and then he basically goes back to his car. Then apparently seen at looking over it. Is it the viaduct at the bridge looking over for like a bus or a taxi or anything coming over in the Oak Cliff section? So yeah, his actions are very strange. I will admit that his actions are very strange. I mean, you can attribute that to anything. Was he looking for Oswald? And that's one of the theories that have been kind of put forward. Yeah. But I don't think we'll ever really know. But yeah, sure, Tony, his actions are very strange, and I think there has been some people that says that Tippit was basically looking for Oswald, and his assignment was to kill Oswald. Well, if that was the case, when he saw Oswald at Oak Cliff, and if and then all his excuse would have.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnny,
Identified him as a suspect. Yeah.
Johnny,
Can you
sorry.
hear me?
Yeah, you're just breaking up so much now. It's really difficult to understand you. I think we'll have to close this session. I do apologise.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's no, when you come on, it's fine, but you're breaking up every sort of 10 seconds or so. So I think it's probably better that we close this session. I'm sorry.
I think it's see when I click to the bottom of the screen, I've got full coverage, but it says that Dealey Plaza UK only has one bar, a signal.
Really? Well, yeah, it might be the university. I tell you what, sorry, Johnny, I think it's better to close now, just because it's becoming difficult to understand you. But thank you very much for your insight today. Take care.